You're listening to episode 848 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled Known by Your Sweater, given on the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2022. Last week, you may remember there was a steamroller and a backhoe in church. Well, let's take a look at the backhoe by digging a little deeper today. Rich Mullins, maybe you know who that is, was a wonderful evangelical singer who once shared a story about the Irish and their sweaters. If you've been to Ireland, you may notice or have noticed that they have bulky sweaters that are very complicated. Well, he shared a story how historically the wives and mothers would knit their men a special sweater that was completely unique to them before they would go out to sea. What was special about the sweaters were their different kinds of knots that were woven and represented the prayers for these men. And because fish don't eat wool, if ever a fisherman was killed at sea and his disfigured body washed up on shore, often people would not know who it was by just looking at their ravaged body. Who could this possibly be? But having knit the unique knots in the men's sweaters, the women would be able to identify their husband or son simply by looking at the knots on their sweater and would say something like, "Ah, yes, I know this one. This one is mine." My friends, life has many trials and difficulties. And we can get pretty beat up and or carry wounds that nobody else knows, and sometimes we don't even know we're carrying them. For some, it's almost unbearable. God knows this. And it's for this reason that he has sent his son, Jesus, to rescue us from the powers of darkness and sin. And he's the only one who can ultimately save us and bring us to heaven. So you may have heard, and somebody may have asked you, have you been saved? Is that a question someone's asked you? Mm-hmm. And if you're going to college, I guarantee you'll hear this. I heard it many times at Oregon State University. Have you been saved? Are you saved? As Catholics, this turn of phrase may be foreign to us. I remember going, what? Because nobody shared those phrases with me. But it is important as Catholics to be able to answer this question. But let me give you some background. So, for some Christians, they believe that their salvation is guaranteed or assured, regardless of what they have done and what they are currently doing. This doctrine is sometimes called once saved, always saved, or salvation security is another way of phrasing it. And it finds its roots in the reformer John Calvin, and prior to him, the doctrine from Martin Luther called saved by faith alone, or sola fide in Latin. The church rejects both of these theologies, or these teachings of these two individuals in this regard, for they do not take fully into account our free will. That is, someone's freedom to reject the free gift of God. Now, on the other side of this pole, there are those who are overcome and preoccupied with worry and or dread about whether they're going to heaven or not. And their conclusions are often not. These folks are convinced that their good works will earn them a place in heaven. And so they may not be necessarily driven to do good works out of love for others, but for their own survival, their selfishness. Not the ideal reason. I'm going to do this so I can get that. Can you imagine being used that way? I'm loving you so I can get to heaven. This is what is called works salvation or works righteousness. It's a theology also rejected by the church. So my friends, it is part of our broken psychological nature to go back and forth between these poles. But somewhere in the middle is the truth. No, we cannot earn salvation. It is a free gift. In the gospel here today, Jesus challenged those who were presumptuous about their salvation. For again, we have free will. And while we are faithful now, I've known people who have turned away. You may as well. Now, a beautiful gift has happened for a lot of you when you were baptized. I hear we have a 1-year anniversary for one of our children who was baptized. When you were baptized, you were given a garment. She still has her garment, I see. I'm wearing mine. It's in my alb, and the servers are wearing theirs in their albs. It's a sign of one's inherent now dignity as a Christian through their baptism. It's also why women wear white dresses. You might have thought of another reason, but it's the Christian dignity that you are given. As we look at the Irish tradition, I wonder, when Christians are baptized, what are those knots that would be in like their sweaters if they had them? But maybe that indelible mark that is particular to that person that God has given to them freely, grace poured upon them in that baptism. Now, what we do with our lives is our free will. There's boundaries, of course, around that. But that may help or harm our faith journey. We are all sinners, myself included, and we struggle with many things like shame, addictions, and any other order of sin or disorders. But one thing is for certain, and that is this: God knows you and wants you to be with him for eternity. And he has given us this sacrament of reconciliation in order to help us to return to our baptismal state of holiness when we have, through our own fault, sinned during our pilgrimage of our life. So, how do we answer the question, are you saved, or have you been saved? Here's a Catholic response. And as Catholics, like a good Jesuit would do, there's 3 points. I'm diocesan, so I'm just borrowing from the Jesuits here. The answer to the question is, yes, I am saved. Okay? Yes is the answer. Why? Because I've accepted Jesus Christ and I was baptized. So that's the reason. And I am being saved, this is number 2, as I run the race towards my ultimate destiny, which means turning to the Lord every day and responding to that gift through works of love towards my neighbor. And 3, I hope to be saved as I strive to persevere and respond to God's grace until the end of my days. So yes, I've been saved, I am being saved, and I have hope to be saved. These are a good Catholic answer. It's not a one-phrase thing that someone might want, but some things are so mysterious, we need to give more as a response. So salvation is neither absolutely guaranteed, nor is it something we earn or own. It is a gift given to us by God. Instead, it is then something that should, in our faith, have fruits, such as hope and joy, not panic. If we're in a state of panic, then we have to look at our state of sin and repent. So in your final days on earth, or in mine, you and I will be marked with scars and sin and any other kinds of things that disfigured us. You've been maybe even just to a high school reunion, maybe some of you, and you're like, wow, that person was really beat up over time, and they're kind of looking at you too, probably going, yeah, you've been pretty beat up over time too, right? History has not been kind to some of us. But we need to hold on to the hope that and have persevered in our faith. This is an everyday thing. That's why we come to Mass. And through God's grace, then may you enter through that narrow gate. And if you will, when you die and wash up on the shores of eternity, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all the prophets, and even the angels will see you. They may not recognize you for all the things that have happened to you, from being disfigured from the sin of the world. You may have been beat up as you've walked through life. They may even say, "What is this that is washed up? We're not even sure if it's human." But Jesus will say, "Oh no, this one is human. I know this one. This one is mine." And they will say something like, "Jesus, how do you know who this is?" And he will reply, "Well, you see that sweater he's got on? Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. Now, the story I told from Rich Mullins, you can actually watch him in concert, or there's a little clip I will put in my show notes. The clip has this story, just condensed, and you'll see I'm basically quoting him and also imitating how he speaks a little bit, just to get the effect of, well, and he used more humor than I did. But the story, basically. After Mass, I had a gentleman that was actually from Ireland, and he came up to me with his Irish brogue and mentioned how he wasn't familiar that just a single, like a person going out to sea would have a special knot or sweater with knots in it, but that a whole family would have a special, and this is still true today, there'd be a family knot or a family design or type of sweater, but that would still hold then that if those men would go out into the sea from that family, that the parents, or I should say the wives and the sons and daughters and the parents of the person, the man that went out, would be able to be identified because of the identifying family knots in their sweaters. Also, if you'd like to know, this past weekend, right after this Mass, I was involved in the installation as a pastor at Holy Trinity here in Beaverton, and that was wonderful. The oath of fidelity and all that's part of it is very moving. So I would, if you're interested, if you've never heard of it or are not aware of it, this is something that all pastors are supposed to experience. So they are officially and canonically made the pastor, which is done in a ceremony and some signing of documents. But the amazing thing is an oath that is taken. I encourage you, if you want to see that, to go to my show notes. I'll put that also in the links, my show notes. But if you want to search around on YouTube for Holy Trinity and Beaverton, Oregon, you can hunt down the installation Mass, as well as all the Masses that they are doing. We record the Masses at our 9:30 Mass every Sunday. And who knows, maybe in the future we'll do some more other Masses, but right now that's what we're focused on. And every week you can go to h-t.org. That's our website at our church, and you can at least get the links to the basic site there and the podcast that they're producing, which is the same audio I have here, but wrapped up a little bit differently. I have my commentaries you're hearing now, and the other one is a little bit more just an introduction and a conclusion. So if you have any questions, you can go to my website at fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. You can send me an email from there. You can see what's going on Facebook and Twitter and my YouTube page. I've been doing some Friday reflections for the parish and then duplicating the actual video. It's a video on my personal YouTube site as well as the parishes as well. So if you want to check that out, go for it. In the meantime, may God bless you and have a blessed week. Bye-bye.